In the following tutorial, we're going to take a look at the three types of tweens in Flash. Now, understanding the three different types of tweens is very, very important because knowing which tween to use when is one of the difficult things about Flash. Now, the three tweens are motion tweens, then we have classic tweens, and we have shape tweens. With shape tweens, we have something that's very different than the other two types of tweens. And I have the motion tweens and classic tweens side by side because there are a lot of similarities between them. Now, the motion tween is a new type of tween to Flash CS4, and the classic tween is what used to be called a motion tween in all the previous versions of Flash. So that's why they call it a classic tween. Anyway, in order to create our first tweenable object, we need to create a new layer. You'll notice that I have a background layer right now and it's locked. That's to indicate that I don't want to draw on it. So let's create a new layer, and this first animation will be a motion tween. So let's call that layer motion tween. In order to create a motion tween, we need to start off with some sort of object or symbol that we want to use. So I'm going to click and drag and create just a simple green box. And I know this is not the most fun, looking object to animate. It'd be much more fun to animate a character, but we need to start off with the basics of understanding the different tweens first. Anyway, with this particular drawing object, if you right click on it, you'll notice that you get two types of tweens when you right click on the object itself. Create motion tween and create shape tween. If I go down to the timeline and right click on the symbol there, or on the keyframe there, you'll notice that it says create motion tween, shape tween, or classic tween. So we have all three types of tweens that we can create. Now I want to point out that I'm going to be making a mistake here on purpose just to show you what happens. But I'm going to right click on this object before I've turned it into a symbol. You can right click on the object or on the keyframe and choose create motion tween. Now this will come up with an error or a warning that says you cannot tween this object, you must convert it to a symbol first in order to tween. Do you want to convert it and create that tween? And if you click OK, what it does is it automatically converts this object to a symbol for you and names it, puts it in the library, and it's jumped my timeline over to frame 30. Now I can't see what's going on in the background layer anymore because that only has one frame for its timeline. So let's right click at frame 30 for the background layer and choose Insert Frame. This will extend the background out to the same length as the default length for motion tweens, which is 30 frames. Now why would they use 30 frames, by the way? And that is because TV runs at 29.97, so 30 frames is typically 1 second of some sort of video or animation that might go on TV or something. So it's a default that is used often. Anyway, I want to go to the library and see what that object is. That symbol that has been automatically named is called symbol 1, and this is something I definitely want you to avoid, and that is automatically named symbols. So let's double click on this and at least give it our own name. Now in general, it'll be best that you can make your symbols first before you make your tweens, and I'll cover that in just a minute as well. Anyway, with this motion tween, you should also notice that that layer has changed its icon to indicate a motion tween icon. Now in order to use a motion tween, all you have to do is go to some other point in the timeline and modify your object somehow. You can move it, you can scale it, so I'm going to the free transform. Now I just skewed it a little bit. I can scale it, and I can rotate it. Then go to any other time in between and modify your object some, and you'll notice that it's also going to animate. So one of the nice things about the motion tween is that it automatically makes keyframes for you whenever you want. So I just made a very simple tween with 4 different places, 4 different keyframes. You can see these black keyframes here, or they're kind of light. They're not quite as black as this, and that's because of the fact that I had that layer selected at the time. So notice that it has these points in here as well, and it has a series of small dots. Those are the position of the object at each different keyframe. Now you can click on the white arrow actually and adjust the individual positions of these keyframes, which is kind of nice. You can also go to the pen tool and modify this somehow. Whoops. Sometimes, oh, I guess it's not going to. So it doesn't allow me to draw on it. There is a way for you to modify this point afterwards, but we'll deal with that at the later tutorial. Anyway, I'm going to kind of go along this path to the very end, and I'd like to add one other thing. Now, motion tweens can also have other changes, such as your color changes. So when you click on the symbol, go to Color Effect, go to Tint, and let's make it go yellow, making it go all the way. Now here's one of the things that's interesting. Even though I've placed this at the last keyframe, that color effect has been placed across the lifespan of the entire animation. If I need to edit that, I need to go to some other place where there's a keyframe and edit that symbol, edit the color effect, so it's set to 0. Now I can also go some other time that is not one of the other position keyframes and set the effect there as well. And you'll see that it creates independent keyframes for each individual tweenable thing. So these motion tweens can be very complex. Now I'm going to show you one thing that you don't really have to use right now, but these tweens are actually going into the motion editor. I'm going to pull this out so we can see it by itself. And this motion editor is actually a record of all the different properties that have been changed within that motion tween. So you can see the motion editor gets pretty complex. I'm going to go back to the DME setup, close my code for right now, and that's just to show you what is possible with the motion tween. Now we can add one other thing to a motion tween. We can add 3D rotations as well. So if you click on the 3D rotate tool, then you can click on your object and you can actually move it around in 3D space. And I might go back to some existing keyframes just to make it a little bit easier. And you'll see now that it's flipping around, and it's actually in 3D space that it's flipping around. So it's pretty powerful what you can do. Now I'd like to extend this timeline out a little bit longer to at least 50 frames or 55 frames. And here's two things that are very important. If you click on your motion tween timeline and click and drag afterwards, you'll see that it has actually taken the existing animation and just scaled it out to fit the new length of time. So that's one of the things that makes motion tween animations much more powerful than they used to be, and that is they're very, very easy to scale and change the length of time for. If I take that back to 30 frames, you'll see that the keyframes have now been spaced out as they were originally. Now I'd like to extend my animation out to 55 frames, but not change the current keyframes. In order to do that, I can right-click at frame 55 and choose Insert Frame. You'll notice, of course, that the background element has not been altered, so let's go ahead and insert a frame there as well so that we can extend the background out to 55 frames. Now I can go to somewhere after the existing animation and change my animation somehow. I might have to switch between different tools, of course, to be able to move the animations. And at frame 55, I'll do one last change. Maybe go back to this one. And maybe take the tint back to 0. So you can see I've made a lot of different animation changes within this one object over these 55 frames. Let's go ahead and save our work And when you save, make sure that you remove the underscore start, and then we're going to go on to the classic tweens and the shape tweens in the next tutorial.